Welcome back to the second iteration of the PuckLuck.com betting and fantasy team previews for the Arizona Coyotes. We look at a team that last year finished with 70 points, was sixth worst in the league, and yet I'd still say exceeded expectations. Not only as far as staying out of the absolute basement of the league, but also a lot of their players and players that maybe you didn't even expect. Of course, Clayton Keller, 86 points in 82 games, was the all-star, the highlight. Nick Schmaltz, probably forgotten about by many, was nearly a point a game at 58 and 63. But Yusuf Alamaki was maybe the biggest bright spot unexpectedly to come to this team, getting completely abandoned, forgotten about by the team that took him very early in the first round in Vancouver, and just kind of showed up and played a very useful power play role. Maybe not a great shot producer, but a very, very good distributor of the puck. And Barrett Hayton, who silently almost had 20 goals. Again, it was a very fun team, but let's get into more of the betting side of things and see, kind of going forward what they could be next year. As I mentioned, they finished with 70 points last year, and we have them projected for 71, the biggest improvement in the world. But again, I think it says something to the model, thinking that they actually have improved from what anyone would have thought last year. A team that still is going to be very much on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. But I don't really think they're as close to the floor as the model is kind of giving a pretty wide range of outcomes. 53 would be unbelievably low. 80 at the ceiling would be an incredibly successful season, I think. But yeah, I think that 71 is fair, but I almost shade a bit over what our model thinks. Other than the last time with the Ducks, I thought it might be a little bit more forgiving to the Ducks. I think this is I think this is a good team, at least a fun team, a team that might have more fantasy relevance. Last year, it kind of felt like people were late to the punch or kind of maybe missed a lot of the potential Arizona one, correlations in daily fantasy. But this is still a team getting over to the DraftKings sportsbook kind of odds that it's very unlikely to make the playoffs, very unlikely to win the division, and even more unlikely to win the cup. Our model doesn't really like any bets. It thinks all of them are priced pretty incorrectly. You'll find for a lot of these bottom of the barrel teams, the Stanley Cup odds are just not even close. Just the sportsbooks will take your money if you're going to give it to them. If you're a big fan, they'll say, "Hey, put $10 on them. We'll keep it." 250 to 1 is just still not even close to what a model would predict. Division as well, we have them closer to 330 to 1 rather than their 200 to 1. And the over under on points, it's 73 and a half for the sports books. We shade the under. I think it's still just kind of a shade, and I think it's that's about fair for what they could get to. I just don't plan on betting it. Playoffs was honestly the one I was most interested in. And again, it just wasn't enough. I shopped it a little bit. Plus 750 on DraftKings is much better than FanDuel, and it's still just not very good. I think the point projections is where you're actually going to find something in the sports books. Now, there wasn't a ton of offerings. Maybe we'll get more as the season draws closer. I think a lot of people might take a look at Logan Cooley, maybe Barrett Hayton as well, just kind of these younger guys who might have bigger roles. Jason Zucker comes over to this team, maybe adds a little bit more to their top six. I'm certainly myself looking at Nick Schmaltz, who I will be absolutely hammering wherever I can find him for points. Probably goals as well, just thinking how good Clayton Keller actually is at hockey, that it's going to, kind of service him as well. Those two are going to be kind of tied at the hip, and I love that. I think they're both really good. I think obviously Keller is the play driver here, but I'll take it all day. And then way at the end here, all the way to your right is Sean Jersey, who we are projected to be the first power play on a pretty good unit with a lot of stuff like young stars in the making and stars that already arrived with Clayton Keller. So yeah, I think this is a team that could produce offense, not at the craziest rate in the world, but better than probably many are going to give them credit for. So looking at the lineup, can't imagine they split up the Keller, Hayton, Schmaltz unit. That unit rocked last year. It became a very fun DFS play, especially at lower ownership, which wasn't always at because people actually were starting to play it. Logan Cooley, Gunther, and Zucker. Obviously you can make some movements. I mean, Lawson Krause back-to-back 20-plus goal years. Maybe he slides up the lineup here or there, but if they bring in Jason Zucker to play, probably with some of these younger guys and teach them the ropes, we kind of talked about with the Ducks, this kind of makes sense to me. Defense is really where I think they've improved the most. I'm a big JJ Moser fan. I think he's a pretty good player, at least better than maybe many give him credit for. And I think if he plays with Jersey or Dumbo, you can kind of mix in between the two. But especially with Jersey, I think it'd be a really nice improvement for him. Stetcher and German also pretty gifted offensively. So I don't really find a lot of, I guess completely dead weight here. Maybe there's some, but not an insane amount. This is a pretty mediocre team, as I mentioned, but they're not absolutely terrible. So again, we went to the media and just trying to get a quote. I went to Mike Gold. Definitely someone you should give a follow. I'm going to definitely link him again, Mike T Gold on Twitter at Mike T Gold. Um, so I'm not going to read it word for word exactly, but again, we're asking for something our model might be missing. And what he went over is that Arizona has recently been a very favorable place for defensemen to reestablish or establish themselves. I already mentioned this for Yusuf Alamaki. He also brings up Shane Gostisbehere. It all makes sense to me, especially these offensive gifted players, giving them that kind of role where they can flourish. It makes enough sense, but I mean, even more so than anyone may have imagined. So he highlights Matt Dumba. That's sort of the curve in his career is starting to hit the other side and would need that reemergence to kind of reestablish himself as at one time a pretty usable asset to no one wanted him all that bad here in the free agency. And of course, as I already mentioned it, and he mentions it, Sean Jersey as well. I mean, a guy that actually is kind of on the up and up. I think personally that Jersey's going to win most of that ice time and win that power play, but it could go either way. And just saying, like, these guys will be playing on the power play with Keller, Schmaltz, and Logan Cooley, which I agree with. It's a very, very good spot to be in. Add Barrett Hayton for me in that mix. You add Jersey or Dumba. I think it's Jersey, but you could definitely convince me either way. You're talking about a pretty good power play unit, and you're talking about, again, a very usable fantasy asset and a guy that you may be able to find at some crazy sports books. Why not, right? I think that's something you could sprinkle in. I have no idea what you'd find for Sean Jersey over under on points. But again, leave it below this video. These are eventually given YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube at this time, leave it in the comments. If you find any of these odds and you want me to take a look at them or grab it for the model, but yeah, no, that's going to do it for here for the Arizona Coyotes. We'll be back with the Boston Bruins next. Thank you for watching.